appear to be ramping up their investigation into Donald Trump's personal attorney and wingman, Rudy Giuliani. Prosecutors for the Southern District of New York have discussed making legal requests for Giuliani's electronic communications. It's according to two sources familiar with the probe talking to NBC News. The sources say that the investigation into Giuliani is ongoing, with one saying it is, quote, very active. However, the scope of the probe remains unclear. The Wall Street Journal back in October 2019 reported that prosecutors were reviewing the former New York mayor's bank records as part of an investigation into his dealings with Ukraine. The Justice Department and the Southern District of New York declined to comment on the investigation, and Giuliani's attorney, Robert Costello, told NBC News that he has, quote, no reason to believe there's any truth to the allegations that there is renewed interest in my client. Let's bring into our conversation Neil Katyal, former acting U.S. Solicitor General, Georgetown University law professor and an MSNBC contributor, and our friend Tim O'Brien, senior columnist at Bloomberg Opinion. Neil, what is this reporting about the Giuliani investigation, which we haven't heard much about, say to you?
It says a lot. I mean, first of all, it says that Rudy Giuliani at this point, Nicole, has done it all. He's gone from America's mayor to America's crazy uncle. Now he's America's most wanted, I guess. This is amazing. The lawyer to the president of the United States is under active criminal investigation by a Department of Justice run by the president of the United States. And it's even more amazing that this investigation is being carried out by Rudy Giuliani's former office, the Southern District of New York, the storied office that Giuliani once ran 30 years ago. And it's even more amazing still that Rudy Giuliani is out there defending the president on this, on his loss in the election at the same time as he's under investigation. He's essentially angling for a pardon. And so you've got all of these things kind of swirling at once. This investigation has been going on a long time. There were two other associates of Mr. Giuliani, Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, who've both been indicted already and charged with campaign finance fraud violations and wire fraud violations. They had a company called Fraud Guarantee. I kid you not. That is the actual name of the company. And Fraud Guarantee paid Rudy Giuliani $500,000. And Fraud Guarantee has been around since 2013. And according to Florida records, never had a single client, never had any returns for its investors. It defaulted on its office lease, but somehow managed to pay Rudy Giuliani $500,000.
And there's been reporting in the New York Times at the beginning of the month that Donald Trump is committed to doling out preemptive pardons, and a whole bunch of them. What would that protect Rudy from if this investigation results in some criminal exposure for Rudy, but Trump goes ahead and pre-pardons him?
Well, first of all, there's a whole debate about whether a preemptive pardon is even permissible at all. But let's assume it is, and that the president can do what Gerald Ford did, just kind of a blanket pardon for a number of years for any and all crimes, which may be a lot with Rudy. Even still, all that would do is prevent federal investigation, including this current one in the Southern District of New York. It wouldn't preclude any state charges. And here in New York actually moved to close, a so-called loophole that existed in past years in which if you got a presidential pardon, it would have arguably created double jeopardy problems and immunized you from a state prosecution. New York's legislature changed that now. And so even if Rudy gets help from his client, the president of the United States, in the form of a preemptive pardon, I'm not sure that's going to get him where he needs to go.
So, Tim, as when we talk about these stories, I always in my brain hear the music from Jaws. And another story that fits into this sense that the door is closing and investigators are getting closer is news today about his private banker at Deutsche Bank resigning just, out of the blue today. Here's the headline from the New York Times. Deutsche Bank in August opened an internal review into a 2013 real estate transaction between Ms. Vrablic and Mr. Scalzi, and a company owned in part by Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Mr. Trump, and one of their clients. Talk about the Deutsche Bank story, the reporting on it from you, from Bloomberg, from the New York Times, and its intersection with criminal exposure for Donald Trump and his family.
Well, the easiest way to think about Deutsche Bank, Nicole, is it's a financial Pandora's box for Donald Trump. After Trump defaulted on over $3 billion of loans in the early 1990s, no major bank in the world would do business with him. He was considered off limits. He didn't tell banks the truth about his finances. He didn't make good on his debts. They ended up taking massive losses. And after they cleaned that mess up, they all walked away from him. But for Deutsche Bank, and that's always been one of the, $10 million questions sitting around Donald Trump is, why did this one bank continue to do business with him? Even after, in the mid-2000s, when one of his Chicago projects came under stress, Trump sued Deutsche Bank to avoid paying them back for a massive loan on that property, and yet they kept doing business with him. They transferred all the business in that bank out of its traditional commercial lending arm into the private bank, and their account was run there by Rosemary Vrablic. And Deutsche Bank has had a lot of problems itself. It's transgressed around money laundering and other regulatory issues on at least two continents. It's always been a target in the last several years from regulators and law enforcement officials. The bank has worked hard to get past those problems, but all of those problems occurred when Donald Trump was their client. And everything that happened inside that bank creates a money trail that can be followed to connect Donald Trump to some of the questions I think that people have wondered about him throughout his whole administration. Why does he seem to be so beholden to Vladimir Putin? Why do he and his minions like Rudy Giuliani march around Eastern Europe with impunity? Where does the money move? And I think that's why Deutsche Bank is a soft spot for Donald Trump, for Jared Kushner, for the Trump organization, because it's a financial money trail that could get them in deep trouble if prosecutors follow it.
Well, Tim, just to take this money trail explanation for all of these unanswered questions, do you think it is one that becomes illuminated when all of the protections and power that go with the sitting president of this country disappear immediately? I mean, do you think we'll learn the answers and we'll learn what Deutsche Bank has been hiding for Trump and his family?
That's certainly one of the things that's looming front of mind for Donald Trump. I think he's very well aware. I think that's one of the reasons he's been acting, lashing out at people around him and doing everything he can do to try to stop from leaving office, because the financial money trail is an issue that Cy Vance is looking at at the Manhattan District Attorney's office. Trump has no control over that office. He loses all of the financial protections he gets in the Oval Office when he leaves. And I think that's very front of mind for him. And I think a lot of the pardons you're going to end up seeing him engineer are going to be about filling the holes around his own vulnerability and the legal perils he's facing.
Neil Katyal, do you expect to see some of these names that come up in these Deutsche Bank news stories on the list of pardons? I mean, do you think that Donald Trump will deploy the same tactics he's used with Roger Stone and Michael Flynn on his bankers at Deutsche Bank?
I mean, the kind of MO for this president is if you're his friend, if you help him out, if you're his political ally, you get a pardon. But here, I think Trump has got to worry about something. If he pardons these people, they then can be forced to testify against him or against others. And even if he pardons himself or something, and even if that's somehow declared okay, which I'm not sure it can be given a Justice Department opinion, but even with all of that, the truth is more easy to uncover by investigators if there are pardons, because all these people now can't claim Fifth Amendment self-incrimination rights. And so there's a way in which the pardons that Trump is thinking of doling out may become self-defeating. It may insulate the president from federal criminal liability, not necessarily state, and not necessarily the underlings. And so federal investigators would still be well within their powers to try and come and investigate this and figure out what actually happened with Deutsche Bank, with Giuliani, with Ukraine, with Parnas, with Fruman, with all of these different characters. And so, I do expect these investigations to continue.
The follow the money edict from folks like both of you who've been saying that for 4 years now, and I think Andrew Weissman has added his voice to that, really does feel like the criminal story about Trump and the people around him that will endure, that we'll be talking about for months to come. Neil Katyal.